Hi, this is Kyle Guzik at the University of Southern Mississippi. Today, I'd like to discuss recent dystopian fiction and make some recommendations for reading for people who are interested in dystopian novels. I really enjoy dystopian fiction, and some of the best dystopian fiction involves technology. In this image, we can see a brain interface for an artificial eye. Technology continues to improve rapidly, but trends and changes in technology could also make the world worse. And dystopian fiction can warn us about societal trends, scientific and technological trends that could bring about a worst of possible worlds rather than making the world a better place. So I've selected three books that explore these issues. First, we're going to take a look at The Loop by Ben Oliver. The Loop imagines a world where young adults are sentenced to death for crimes, and then they can only seek stays of execution by volunteering to be research subjects. So I think one of the best ways to learn about a book is to read a selection from it. So I'm going to read a selection from The Loop. So, here in this selection, a young incarcerated woman is contemplating uh, having her execution delayed by allowing her body to be used for research experimentation. I run back to the middle. The walls that separate me from the yards on either side are close enough to touch, and I think about the empty area to my right, the cell that has been unfilled for 2 days now. It used to belong to Maddox Fairfax, my best friend, a regular who was 3 months away from being transferred to the block. Maddox had ridden his luck through 11 delays until his final one, a surgery. They took his eyes and replaced them with prototype prosthetics, a mixture of technology and laboratory grown tissues. For a while, the new eyes worked. He was in agony when he returned to the loop, the stitching and swelling still fresh. But he could tell me the exact dimensions of the yard just by looking from one wall to the other. He could immediately tell how many liters of water filled the harvest tube, and if a plane flew overhead, he'd tell me how high up it was, the exact direction of travel, and how fast it was going. Then one day he wasn't the same Maddox anymore. His body had begun to reject the prosthetics. The tissue became infected. They took him away on the dark train for observations, and he never came back. That's the risk we take when we accept the delays. You pray for a nanotech trial, a vaccination, or a cosmetic injection that removes all body hair or changes your eye color. But every now and then, an inmate is taken away for their delay, and when they return, the back wall opens for exercise. You can hear them screaming in agony because the doctors took their legs, or their lungs, or their heart and replaced it with something new, something robotic. The delays are for the benefit of the alts. The trials exist to test new products that make the lives of the wealthy better. All of us in the loop, we're just guinea pigs for the rich. Next, I'd like to discuss All Rights Reserved by Gregory Scott Katsoulis. In this novel, almost all words and communicative gestures have become copyrighted. And when individuals turn 15, they are fitted with a technological cuff, and special lenses are attached to their eyes that shock them if they speak without paying for their words and actions. In the selection I'm about to read, a young woman has chosen, instead of reading a prepared speech in which she would agree to the terms that would charge her to speak for the rest of her life, she has chosen to remain silent and opt out, and now she's dealing with the consequences of that choice. We had to call our parents. We didn't know if they had seen me on the news. Their company controlled what access they were allowed, and most of their time was spent in the fields. Saritha managed to contact them through the internment bureau, and we were able to set up a call. Mrs. Harris insisted on being present. She was still Sam's custodian, and she stood behind us, arms crossed with a disapproving scowl. "Speth," my father said, amplified but distant. "It's okay." His voice was low and calm. He looked tired. His skin was like dusty leather. My mother's was too. She sat beside him, her eyes downcast. The room was dark behind them, it's insufficiently lit by a dirty fluorescent coil. From the worry on their faces, it was clear they had heard plenty. "Sam," my father said with a slow nod, meaning Sam should tell them everything. Mrs. Harris clicked her tongue. She had explained many times that it was bad etiquette to make the youngest do all the talking just because they did not have to pay. "It's perverse," she said in a low aside to Saritha. Saritha pretended Miss Harris was not there while Sam explained about Beecher, the speech, and what I had done. My body tensed as I waited for a reaction. Sam described the sign of the zippered lips. My mother's mouth twitched. She closed her eyes. When Sam was finished, my father nodded again. He looked older than he should have. They both did. They had to drink a liter of metlatonic twice a day just to survive under the brutal sun. I didn't know if this was because the work made them thirsty or if the sun burned their skin. I didn't know if the metlatonic was helping or harming them. The hefty cost of it was deducted against the indenture. It still looked like the sun was killing them. My father took my mother's hand. She barely moved. The fee for their affection scrolled up on the screen, $6. "I know this must be hard," my father said. I tried not to cry. I failed. I wiped away the tears, desperate for something in his words to guide me. Below him, on screen, scrolled the cost of his handful of words, the Wi-Fi tax, the fee from the Agro-Pollination Inc. for the use of their room and equipment and time off from the fields. I ached to ask them what to do. The silence was killing me. I needed their help, and I hated that everything about this world seemed to conspire to keep their guidance from me. I didn't even know how far away they were. I'd asked, but my parents, Mrs. Harris, and even the teachers at the school couldn't say how far it was from Vermain to Carolina. Geography is proprietary information. "Please," I begged them silently in my head, "tell me what to do." "Did you have anything to add?" my father asked my mother slowly. That was it. I blinked back more tears. Couldn't they see my face? Couldn't they read it, even if their eyes were blurry? I had no idea how far they were from me. My mother looked up, first at him, then at the camera, the screen, and me. She looked so beaten. Her eyes were rimmed red. I wanted to say I was sorry. I wanted to take everything back. But then my mother did something I never thought I'd see. She raised her fingers to her mouth and slowly, deliberately made the sign of the zippered lips, twisting at the end like a lock. She stared at the camera straight and clear, and she smiled. Next up is Landscape with Invisible Hand by M.T. Anderson. In this novel, Earth has been colonized by aliens called the VUV. And the VUV have advanced technology that has caused an economic depression because so much work is now automated. In this selection, the main character's mother, who has an MBA and had worked in a bank, is applying for a job. I did a sketch of a food cart where my mother was applying for a shift. She was waiting to talk to the cart's manager. I remember she jangled her keys up and down in rhythm while I drew the line of customers. "This'll be great," she said. "Restaurant jobs are hard to come by nowadays. No one's going out to eat anymore, but I have a good feeling about this." She pointed her keys at Heather's bucket of broth. "Everyone can afford a cup of chicken stock. This place is going to stick around. The line's a good sign. It's around the block. I think I have a 60-40 chance of getting the job. Maybe 65-35. I asked, "How much an hour?" "I don't know, but I really think I can get this soup job. I can do this. I have a master's." She stared nervously at the tattooed girl who was working at the window. It's only part-time until I get something big, like the admissions job at Qualiplay. I don't think they filled it yet. At least I sent them another email and they didn't reply to tell me the job was filled. I have probably a 30% chance there. Okay, it's been a few months, maybe 25. She drew in her breath. No, you should have seen the way that guy from Brandon shook my hand after the interview. It's a solid 30%. 30-70. That's not so bad. Almost 1 in 3 chances, right? I wish these people would order and get out of the way. A guy in a business suit turned around. We're all waiting, he said. Oh no, I'm not getting broth, my mother said, laughing stiffly. I've applied for a job. I'm just waiting to ask her if I got it. He smiled. Yeah, he said. All of us are waiting to hear about the job. I looked carefully at the other people in line. Several of them had extra resumes pinched in their fingers. Hey, the broth girl shouted it to all of us. I told you guys, get out of here. I'm picking someone tonight. Case closed. Stop all asking me. We looked at each other sheepishly. The line started to disperse, except a couple of people who actually wanted the bouillon and bread special. The business suit guy was walking with us across the parking lot. I can't believe this, he said. I used to have a team of 11 working for me. Flexibility is really important now, said my mother. I was reading an article about how this is a great time for innovation. This is the moment for entrepreneurs. I actually had an administrative assistant, the suit guy said. I would give her post-it notes with stuff I wanted her to do written on them. He held out a finger. Here, Becky, could you do this for me? Done. I suspected he was trying to impress us. I wonder if there had been any Becky. The important thing, said my mother, is to stay positive. You betcha, the guy said dismally. You have an extra resume? Sure, I always bring one. She pulled it out of her purse. My son's an artist. He helped me pick the fonts. Suit guy scanned the page. See, this looks great. It looks perfect, he said. What's the fucking world coming to? I read an article that said all that it takes is just one good idea. Yeah, I like how you formatted your skill set. We have to stay positive and keep networking. Networking is the magic word. We walked around the corner. We were out of sight of Heather's bucket of broth. That's when the suit guy threw my mother against the wall. Listen, bitch, you're not applying for that soup job. It's mine. I have your fucking address now. And if I see you working there next week, I'm going to come over and burn your motherfucking house down. So those are 3 great dystopian novels, which I highly recommend if you're interested in dystopian fiction.